Well, congratulations, you did it. You're on video 5 of the plagiarism tutorial brought to you by the Bell Library and the Tammy CC Writing Center. Today, we're going to do a brief overview about plagiarism and then look at some of the differences between two styles of citation. So the first question is, what is plagiarism? Take a moment, pause the video, and try to come up with your own particular answer. Okay. So then what is plagiarism? It is using other people's work without giving them the due credit. It is when you are using someone else's languages, ideas, or other original material without acknowledging the source. It applies to texts, images, anything published in print or online, manuscripts, and to the work of other student writers. So, did you get this one right? I'm sure you did. Some of the ways to avoid plagiarism: if you're unsure whether something needs to be cited, it's always best to just cite. Keep a working bibliography of your sources that you gathered during your research. Meaning, as you're gathering your research, you are creating citations that you can just copy and paste where you need to. When conducting research, take notes that include the bibliographic information with full citations. This way you can remember where some of your direct quotes have come from. It seems time-consuming on the front end, but it is way better than having to hunt down a 2-line quotation in a journal article that's 20 pages long. Cite as you write. It's real tempting to just leave an open set of parentheses and type in citation here. But actually do the legwork and just cite as you go. And then ask questions. Your instructor, your peers, the writing center, and the librarians are here to help. So let's look at two of our most prominent citation styles, APA and MLA. You'll remember in Module 4, I mentioned that there are two different ways to cite, in text and a references page. This is where we will talk a little bit about reference page entries. In APA, the list of bibliographic entries, meaning the citations of all of your resources, is called a references page. In MLA, it is called a works cited page. It's different in all the other versions of citation styles, so make sure that you are double checking with the manual or with OWL Purdue or with your library or the writing center to make sure you get that one right. This would be a good time to create your working bibliography as well. It's one less thing you have to do when you're actively writing your paper. So let's take a look at what goes into an APA reference. The reason we have a references page is to ensure that your audience can find where the information came from. Let's say theoretically you're writing a paper on developmental education in low socioeconomic school systems. Your audience is going to be involved in what you're writing, and they're going to want to know more. So perhaps they are struck by a particularly pithy quote and they want to read more from that particular author. They'll look at the author's name, go to the reference page, and be able to find the text that you pulled that from. This is why we use the citations. That, and it really does keep your credibility intact. If it's just some weirdo in a basement spewing his opinion, tends to be an uncredible source. But if you've got 15 or 20 authors who are backing up your well-researched claim, this is what we're looking for. All of your references are going to include the following information: who, when, what, and where. All of your sources will have different variations, but this information will always exist. The author's names, the date, the title of the work, and then source data. Let's look at an example of a citation in APA. A journal article is what you may be most familiar with. This is going to be an article that you pull out of the library databases. You can have an article with a DOI or without a DOI. A DOI is simply a number or a hyperlink that is a permanent location for this source. If your journal article doesn't have one, then you don't include it. So let's take a look at the setup of this particular citation. We have the author, their last name is first, and then the author's initials. First initials are always used. You do not spell out their first name. Then you will include the year of publication. After that comes the title of the article from the journal, and then the title of the journal itself. So we're going from small information to bigger information, right? One single author, when it was made, what's the article, which is a little bit bigger, and then the whole journal that is included. So make sure that you are keeping track of this information as you read through your articles. You will then also include volume and issue and the page range. Take a look at the example given. You see the author's last names, Macaulay and Christensen, their first initials, and the year. Note that each piece of information is separated by a form of punctuation. The title of the article is next. It is separated by punctuation. And then we have the title of the journal, the volume, and the issue, and the page range. And then there is the DOI. If you are missing some information, let's say your journal doesn't have a volume number. That's okay. You would just leave out the volume number. So then it would read Psychological Review, parentheses 1, close parentheses, pages 1 to 51. If you didn't have a date of publication, you would put N.D. for no date. Be careful of having to make too many modifications to your citations, though, because that could also lead to credibility issues, but that's for another module. What kind of information goes into an MLA reference? So let's look at an example. So an article in a magazine or a newspaper, or an article in a scholarly journal. Again, this is going to be the one you're used to because these are going to be the ones that you get out of the database. So the authors come first, just like an APA, but as you'll see, they spell out the first name. The title of the article is in quotation marks. The title of the journal, volume and issue, year and pages. Note that it is similar to APA. There's just a little bit of punctuation difference between the two citation styles. However, be careful in thinking that your professors won't catch on to this. Your professors can tell pretty quickly when your citations are incorrect. A few closing notes. Some of your professors are going to be very strict about your work citation. They're going to want you to follow the absolute letter of the law when it comes to citation. Others won't care as much. That does not mean that it is acceptable to plagiarize at any point in time. Be careful to make sure that you are following what your professor requests when it comes to citations. Citation is a learned behavior. It's easy to think, oh, I don't have to worry about this so much. I'm just taking this one writing class. But that's not the case. Everything you write and do any research on will need to have a citation of some sort. Be sure that you are practicing citation. And don't just think that MLA and APA are the only citation styles that exist. There are so many out there. So look around. Get familiar with some of them. You'll never learn them entirely, but the goal is to learn how to navigate them. And our final follow-up. I'll say it again. Plagiarism is not worth the consequences. It is so much easier to turn in your own work than it is to try and pass off somebody else's work as your own. Thank you so much for joining us for this plagiarism module brought to you by the Bell Library and the TAMUCC Writing Center.